For Indigenous people, stories don't always live in textbooks, they live at the kitchen table. That truth is at the heart of Daughter of the Country, a deeply personal solo show by Métis journalist and podcaster Samantha Loney, running August 7 to 12 at Five Points Theatre in Barrie. Through storytelling, music, and family photos, Samantha weaves together tales of her Métis heritage, intergenerational trauma, and the power of oral history in preserving culture and identity. Set in the warmth of a Métis kitchen party atmosphere, the 45-minute show invites audiences to reflect on where they came from and what stories they carry. Part of the Barrie Theatre Festival, the performance is presented by Theatre by the Bay. I spoke with Samantha about the stories that shaped the show and why reclaiming them matters now more than ever. Thank you so much, Samantha, for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So let's talk about your play. Is it a one-person play? What kind of play is it?
Yeah, so it's a solo show, so it'll just be me up on stage. Yeah, it's called Daughter of the Country, and there's five nights. Yeah, it's going to be me up there sort of sharing stories around like a kitchen table, like a sort of like a Métis kitchen party feel, and just sharing stories that have been passed down from my family members about our family and what it's like being Métis growing up in Barrie and all those things.
So then how did this start? Like, where did the idea of doing this one-person play came in?
Yeah, so I think the one reason I wanted to do it was because I wanted to find a way to sort of honor my ancestors and the people who have come before me. I talk about it in the show, but I've had kind of an uneventful life. And I realized it's because of all the struggles that my family have been through before me. And I was kind of out of work for a little bit. And so I was drumming. Sometimes I do like some drumming just to meditate and kind of speak to my ancestors, and kind of, I was feeling lost. So I was drumming and asking for an answer of like, hey, look, what do I do next? Like, I don't really know what path to take. I'm out of work. I don't know what to do next. And then the next day I found the call for the Barrie Theatre Festival, which is what the show is being shown on. And they were looking for submissions for shows. And I thought, this has to be the answer that I was asking for, right? And so I pitched this one-person show that I wanted to do, sort of honoring, like I said, my ancestors and to kind of share their stories with the world. And so that's pretty much how the show came about.
So how long this show is going to be, and are there any different parts? How do you go about telling the story?
Yeah, so it's 45 minutes. Mm-hmm. No intermission. There are some like subject matter that might be sensitive to certain people, but yeah, so the opening of the show is me really just talking about my grandmother and growing up and what Métis people speak Michif. There's a couple variations of Michif, but my family spoke French Michif, and back then it was called Bad French because it's a mixture of Indigenous and French languages. And so she was taught that it was bad to speak this. It was bad French, right? So I discussed that a little bit at the beginning of how she, would hear her mother speaking French Michif and not really understand what she was saying and thinking it was French, but it was the bad French. Mm-hmm. So I talk about that and how that language sort of ended right there with her mother not passing it down to her. And I talk about me growing up in Barrie. Barrie isn't traditional Métis territory, but in the South Shore Center, there is Military Heritage Park, and there is a plaque about the Simcoe Battalion, who were sent to fight the Métis during the Northwest Rebellion. So I talk about kind of growing up in a place where maybe they didn't really like Métis people in history and what it was like to kind of grow up in this area. So yeah, even though it's not our traditional territory, Barrie does have that connection to Métis people, and that's why it's part of the Central Ontario section of the Barrie Theatre Festival. Yeah, and just talking about my aunties and uncles and how generational trauma has really affected them. We had a murder in our family like a couple generations back, of this man who was trying to help a community member who didn't have food and then was murdered for it. So it's just about all these sort of stories and things that have happened in my family and how it's kind of affected me today, because as we know, things that happen kind of generationally get passed down. And really just I wanted to find that sort of where that disconnect of culture is, where it's why do Indigenous people stop celebrating their culture, right? Like I just had that desire in my family to look back and find out, well, where did it stop and why? And it led me to this murder that my grandmother's cousins still talk about to this day, right? So it's, yeah, finding those answers for myself and hopefully sharing the story and allowing other people, even non-Indigenous people, to sort of learn that, hey, like maybe I should talk to my elders and find out more about my family, and share those stories, because our elders are slowly dying off, right? So it's, if you don't collect those stories now, they're going to be lost, right? So, yeah.
Exactly. That's what, like a few days back, I was talking to my wife, and I was thinking about my aunt, who passed away a few years back. She was oldest, my father's oldest sister, and she had a lot of those sayings, really long sayings from like really vernacular language, not from the cities, from the villages and small towns. And I was thinking about that. I thought about before she passed. I thought a couple of times that calling her and then recording those conversations. And even I talked to her once about like writing those down, but I never did that, and I regret that so much.
Yeah.
Because now those are gone. Like those have been passed down for like generations and generations, and after her, nobody really knew that. And then like I feel so bad, like so often that was like one of the things I should have done. so I'm glad, like, and at least that's what, when I communicate with my son, that like, because I remember whatever stories my grandfather told me, so I know he would remember. Like even though at this point maybe his mind is in something else playing or whatever that is. So I hope that he will remember that. So I really understand what it means, because even the family background I'm from, it's kind of not very educated, not very upper caste families. So a lot of the information and knowledge has been passed down orally, because many times in Indian history, many castes were kind of prohibited from learning to write and read. So it's a lot of information came down, and that was case with the Indigenous people. So like how this history, in terms of the oral story that you are going to tell in that 45 minutes, how does that, not only your family but the Métis and Indigenous people as whole, how does that influence your storytelling?
I think like you were saying, sort of the oral history tradition of sitting down, and maybe some of our stories aren't written in history books either, because like history is written by the victor, the saying, right? Like if you're not the person who won the wars or the people who are the upper class, they kind of get to decide how history is portrayed. And so I think I'm very influenced by like sitting with elders in my community and just listening to their stories. Even from a young age, I was always a quiet person. I know I'm performing this one person show, but I was always quiet and listening to their stories. And like I'll talk to my sister and she'll be like, oh, I never knew that. And it's like, oh, well, I would ask like our aunts and uncles and my mother and stuff to share their stories with me, because I think, and I'm lucky, like you said, like sometimes you don't always get those opportunities. So I'm lucky that as a child I was interested in that and I did want to hear them. And I think for us as Métis people, where I think the sort of like that resistance, because we did resist the Canadian government and we kind of fought to be our own people, to be separate and not live on reserves, because we wanted a different lifestyle for ourselves, and we created our own community and culture. And I think just sort of that resistance kind of to like to have your story repressed and not share. I think just the resistance of, I'm going to tell my story, I'm going to tell my family's story. And I've had great feedback from my family members who are extremely proud and want the story told, right? Because I think when you do share your story, it kind of, as we were talking about earlier, those episodes of Library of Lived Experience, right? Like it does free you as a person. And even though my ancestors aren't here, and some of the people, like family members, like when my aunt isn't here with us anymore, but sharing her story, hopefully that provides like healing for the past generation, right? And really, I think just that community-based approach of like I'm sharing my story for my community as well, where hopefully there'll be a Métis person in the audience or another Indigenous person that hears the story and says it's okay to talk about these types of things, right? Because there was domestic violence in my mother's family, and that's kind of, you know, passed down through not dealing with sort of the trauma of their parents, right? So I think it's the more we can talk about things and open up and share stories, I think helps the community and allows them to sort of be open about their story. Especially I think there's a lot of like pan-Indigenous and even pan-Métis. I do my podcast, Traveling Métis, and I talk to a bunch of Métis people, and it's, I think I really try to encourage Métis youth and Métis people in general to learn their personal family story, like where was your family when the Métis community was being created and we were being, you know, like coming together as a nation. Like, what was your family doing? How do you connect to culture? How did your family connect to culture? In the show, I have some music from my grandmother's brother, Larry Code, and he's a Métis musician. And that's how my family really connected to culture, was those kitchen parties and playing the fiddle and the guitar and playing music and having fun, because they really wanted to connect in that way, right? Where it's, when someone comes to the show, I want them to go back and think, well, how did my family connect to culture, and where does that place me in the Métis Nation, and things like that, and really just digging deeper than like the surface of like that stereotypical, this is what Métis people are, right? It's like, find your personal story and what struggles your family went through. And that's what I hope people take away from the show.
Recently I was reading a book. It was about individual psychology, but there was one interesting quote, and I don't remember the exact quote, but it was something like, I think what the book was talking about is, discussing mostly about, so this one particular psychologist, Erich Fromm, he was from Nazi Germany, so he wrote this book in 1940s, and so he was trying to understand, his family escaped Nazi Germany, and then he was trying to understand how did this happen in Germany. So that's what, his understanding was, that happened in 1940s, and he went back to 1400 and 1500 and tried to understand how during the Renaissance and after the rise of capitalism and breakdown of blind faith in God, and how did that create a big vacuum that led people to follow somebody, because they felt so powerless. So whoever filled that vacuum of a God, and they just started following that. And then the reference was, we need to understand the past, whatever happened as an individual, but also as a society, as a nation. We need to understand our past. Then only we will know, where we are going into the future. And as you said, because you take in any marginalized community, whether it's black people in the U.S., it's common saying is slavery happened 150 years back, it's time to move on. But it's in like how that is burned into the conscience of people, how that particular event molded them. Like, as you said, the domestic violence was one of the was in your family. So because one generation, many generation back, was so much trouble, so they keep that passing on to the future generation, and we never dealt with that. And so that's still going on, and we are still passing on. So I think that is, and that's not only, I think, true with the marginalized community, but I think very much true with the other communities as well, with whether it's majority white community, because I think that also will help them understand why they have this, like that is now coming coming forth even more forcefully that our freedom has been taken away. These are all the regulations, and
Yeah.
so I think that will help every single race community to, I think, face that, why they behave the way they behave, why do they think they have the right over
Yeah.
like the natural resources of Canada or the world. Why do they think they should have that business freedom to do mining wherever they want? So I think those stories are like very important for everyone to learn. So what are the stories from other Métis family or Métis community? Because you said your family, this is not the traditional region, traditional land of your family. So can you speak a little bit about, without spoiling
Yeah.
spoiling your show, where does your family come from, and what is the history behind that?
Yeah, so my family, so I'm from two Métis families, the McGregor Rial, which comes from the Red River, and they kind of went back and forth. Marie-Louise Rial and Richard Robert McGregor was her Scotch voyageur husband, and they went back and forth between the Red River and Sault Ste. Marie and had children in both cities. So they were very much a traveling family. And then they ended up on the Ottawa River, actually, which, I'm not going to get into what, the boundaries of the Métis Nation are, but that's where they ended up living after they left the Red River and Sault Ste. Marie, because
and when was this? Well, how long?
mid 1800s was when she went over there with her family, and then I have another family, Laurent Sauvage, and so Laurent comes from the Denny de Laurent family, and they ended up in kind of the same area as well, but there were two brothers, Louis and Charles, so one brother went out west to the traditional Métis area, and the other kind of stayed here in Ontario, traveling, northern Ontario, kind of Georgian Bay area before going back to the Ottawa River area as well. So you could argue, that's not traditional Métis territory either, right? But they ended up living there and starting their families. And my great aunt tells me stories of, they'd get clothing from out west shipped to them because they were poor. So they kind of still had that connection going, even though they weren't living in, the homeland. They ended up calling the Ottawa River home, where I actually found a couple documents where the Métis people who lived on the Ottawa River were called Red River cast-offs. So it was like they left the Red River and decided to come to Ontario, and they weren't wanted here either. Because a bit of Métis history is, like I said, the Simcoe Battalion in kind of the Simcoe County area were fighting the Métis, and the Orange men were living in Ontario, and they were the ones that wanted to hang Louis Rial, who's a Métis leader in our community, who kind of fought for our community to help get Métis rights. So I think, just that's where my family's from, and I think these stories, I think, are important to tell, because I think a lot of Métis people don't live currently on the Métis homeland, and a lot of Métis people had to leave the Red River or leave wherever their community is. And I think, it's important to find ways to connect and kind of explain, like, these are the struggles of our family, because I think a lot of people don't really fully understand what a Métis person even is, because we were kind of those half-breeds that needed to start their own community because people didn't really want to deal with them. And that's why a lot of Métis people, like, we have a history of political activism where we weren't included in treaties and we weren't included in a lot of things. And so I think, just the history of Métis people is constantly fighting to say, hey, like, we also matter and we're important. And I think, telling those stories of my family, I'm only one Métis person. Of course, there's so many other Métis people that have stories as well. And I just encourage people, again, like I said, to not cover that pan-Métis story where it's like, what was your family doing? Where did they live? And all those things, and just encouraging people to go find out the history of your family. Because like I said, we were talking about sort of looking into our history and our past to kind of find out the present and why things are the way they are now. And when I was talking to my great aunt, who told me about that grandfather of hers that was murdered, we have a strong desire in our family, and my mom always, like, we didn't grow up with a lot of money, but it was always like, give back to community, do what you can. And I never really understood that. And then when I learned about the way that he died and how he died because he was helping community and he was punished for that, that it just kind of became important to our family that because he was murdered, you know, we have to honor him and keep giving back to community. And I think that's, yeah, an important moment in history to understand, again, why my family is like that and why we constantly have that need to give back to community. So I think, yeah, like you can learn a lot about yourself through, that history of your family.
Who this particular show is geared towards? Like, is it for old people, young, who can come in and what they can get through this?
I would say due to like the sensitive nature of the material, probably like teen up, because it does discuss the, like the murder and domestic violence that kind of happened in my family. And there's that sort of sensitive issue that a lot of Indigenous storytellers, I think, these are important stories to tell, but I think, people who are teens and up will be able to process maybe more of the information. A small child might not be able to fully understand the story and what's going on. But yeah, I hope Métis people come and learn and are inspired to learn about their family and find ways to honor their ancestors. And then I think if non-Indigenous people show up, but like I said, there is that Métis history here in Barrie that I think a lot of people don't know, even though it's a dark history that maybe people don't want to fully hear about. But I think it's important that, like you said, like in order to heal the present, we have to go back into the past. And I do talk about, growing up in Barrie and the Simcoe Battalion and that history of learning, these people wanted to murder our family. So I think, I think it's for everybody, teens and up, anybody who's, able to process and handle that. I know like some sensitive topics, some people just, aren't emotionally able to sit through these types of shows, but I hope, anybody who can and who's willing to learn a little bit about maybe my family and all that are able to come out.
Yeah, because I remember when my son was maybe 2 or 3 years old and we were watching The Lion King, and then, that's one of the movies I watched and then I was watching with him and he was maybe too young, and there's one particular scene where this dad lion tried to save his baby lion as this wild beast are coming in, and then he saves him, but they just run through him and he dies, and my son got really scared, and then we stopped watching. And the same night he got up middle of the night crying, dad.
Yeah.
And that was like so touching moment for me that he cares for me, and then even though he was crying, I kind of felt good about myself. And then after a few years, maybe 2-3 years, then he realized about death. I think there was a particular time, maybe he was 5, he was like obsessed with death. And then when I told him that my father passed away, then he realized like what death is. And then I kind of understood that kids process this information on their own.
Yeah.
And then we sometimes think they are not ready, they are too young, but at some level they understand that these people I'm living with that I love, they're going to go away someday because they are older than me, sooner than I think. So I like as a performer, like you have right to tell people what is the right age, but from where I come from, I think kids are much more capable of processing the information about death and trauma. And sometimes even I share some information with my son, like whenever I take him to Truth or Reconciliation Day, I tell him what has been done to the kids. I know he's young, but I feel like he needs to understand, because I think kids need to know about what violence is, because sometimes things happen to them and they just take it for granted and they accept it. And if we tell them that this is a wrong thing, this is a bad thing, hurting kids is not correct, so someone hurts them, they have the courage and to tell us that somebody did this to me, because we have told them that this is not acceptable. So I think that's one of the questions I had for you was, I want to come to the show, but is my son should come. So maybe I don't know if it's viewer discretion. Maybe I will think about it, or maybe a few years, because he's 7 right now. Maybe a few years down the line, I can take him to the show. But I think there is the importance of talking these things with kids, understanding, like trying to understand what information they can process. But I think we can share that. And just the last question, like, what is the format for this show? Because you are a drummer, you sing as well, you are a storyteller, you did your own podcast, you work as a reporter. So just in terms of, like, in 45 minutes, what viewers can expect from this show.
I won't personally be singing and performing music, but I do have, so my grandmother's brother, Larry Code, he is a celebrated Métis musician. He's actually in the Ontario Country Music Hall of Fame, and he's no longer with us, so he physically won't be there, but I will have music from him. He did a whole Métis album that he recorded, so I'll be, I believe it's in like the archives of Canada, so I was able to get that music and be able to share that music with people at the show. And it's going to be, just me up there kind of performing. And I have personal family photos of the people that I'm going to be talking about. I'm very lucky to have photographs of my family members, even going back to the 1800s. Indigenous people are like very well documented with Indian agents and things like that. So I have a bunch of material that my family just has collected over the years to sort of share these stories with each other. Like you said, like the oral storytelling of, hey, like we have these photos and these documents, and let's share it with family members and kind of pass that information down. So I have, photos that I'll be sharing, and that music that I'm very lucky that I was able to get that. His sister, so my grandmother's sister, is still alive, and she's been working with me to sort of preserve that music, and I believe she has one of the only albums that is left in existence. Wow. Of this music. So I was lucky enough to have that physical copy and be able to find some songs that were, because it's called Daughter of the Country, which is a common term that would be given to some Métis women. And so there's a song on his album that is dedicated to matriarchs in our family. So I have that song that I'll be sharing at the end as well. And it's just, that sort of intimate kind of performance of, like I said, you're at the Métis kitchen parties that my family used to throw. Because I think a big part of Métis culture is like getting your family together around food and music and kind of celebrating each other and partying. And so I want the audience to be able to feel like they're in our kitchen, kind of getting these stories, just like I was told these stories at a table in someone's kitchen, right, in my family. So I think that's kind of the intimate kind of feel I want to leave people with.
Yeah, and then what are the dates for the show? What are the timing, and where can people get the tickets?
So it's being put on through Theatre by the Bay for the Barrie Theatre Festival. So you can go on Theatre by the Bay's website. I believe they're also sold on Ticket Pro. So it's August 7th to the 12th is my show. So it'll be 5 nights, every night, but so Thursday to Tuesday, except for Monday night, there's no show, but there are the 5 dates at 7 p.m. And then there's a show that follows mine, Crime After Crime, which is a comedy. So if you need a little lighthearted break after this, you can purchase tickets individually, or you could get a pass to see the 2 shows at night. And you could, come to, I encourage, if you can go to the whole festival. The festival goes until August 17th. My show just runs from the 7th to the 12th, but there's, performances for kids, for matinees during the week as well. Of course, like you were saying, it's up to the parent to decide if the child can go to the other shows as well. But I think there's going to be something for everyone, and I hope people go to Theatre by the Bay. So Daughter of the Country is going to be performed from August 7th to 12th at the 5 Points Theatre in downtown Barrie, and the show starts at 7 p.m.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.